Year's Day, 1985. A hungover driver stumbled down an embankment off Interstate 75 near Jellicoe, Tennessee, squinting at something tan in the brush below. A blanket, he thought. Maybe a tarp. He got within 10 feet and stopped. The smell hit him first, sharp, unmistakable. Then his eyes focused. Red hair splayed across decomposed skin, defensive wounds on pale hands, a tan pullover soaked in violence. Someone had dumped her here like trash, wrapped in a stained blanket, left to rot beside America's busiest trucking corridor. For 34 years she would remain nameless. Jane Doe, file number 8501JC. No family, no identity, no justice. Until a mother who refused to stop searching forced science to speak her daughter's name. The investigation began immediately, but without a name, this case would haunt 2 states for over 3 decades. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This channel covers cold cases where justice delayed doesn't mean justice denied. Indianapolis, Indiana. While the nation mourned JFK and the Beatles prepared to invade America, Tina Marie McKinney entered the world on March 7th. The city's east side was a patchwork of modest homes and factory smoke, the kind of neighborhood where fathers worked at GM's Indianapolis plant and mothers stretched paychecks through creativity and grit. Tina's father hauled himself to the auto factory each dawn, grease under his fingernails, union card in his wallet. Her mother took in sewing jobs at the kitchen table, mending torn work pants by lamplight, while Tina and her sister Sandra played jacks on the linoleum floor. The McKinney household wasn't poor. Exactly, they had food, heat, and love, but money remained perpetually tight. Tina stood just over 5 feet tall, 110 pounds of red curls and freckled defiance. Friends remembered her laugh, bright and uninhibited, the kind that infected entire lunch tables. Her green eyes sparked during study hall pranks. She loved drawing. Art class was her sanctuary, where she sketched portraits and abstract designs in spiral notebooks. Her bedroom walls displayed pencil drawings of horses, flowers, and the faces of celebrities torn from Teen Beat magazine. A transistor radio sat on her nightstand, always tuned to the top 40 station, Madonna and Cyndi Lauper, providing the soundtrack to her teenage years. But Tina wasn't just dreams and doodling. She understood reality. After graduating in 1981 at 18, she didn't head to college. That wasn't an option for families like the McKinneys. Instead, she found work as a secretary at a small manufacturing firm downtown. 8 hours a day. She typed correspondence on an IBM Selectric, filed invoices in metal cabinets, and answered phones with practiced professionalism. The paycheck covered rent on a small apartment and groceries, with little left over. In 1982, at 19, Tina married briefly. She took the last name Farmer, but the relationship crumbled within months, young love colliding with adult responsibilities. By 1983, she had given birth to a daughter, a tiny girl with her mother's red hair. Tina balanced work and motherhood through sheer determination, dropping her daughter at her mother's house each morning before catching the bus downtown. Sister Sandra became her closest confidant. The 2 women, both young mothers navigating working-class Indianapolis, shared babysitting duties, borrowed each other's clothes, and spent weekend afternoons at Eagle Creek Park, watching their children play while they dreamed of better days. By November 1984, Tina Marie Farmer was 21 years old and caught in the gravitational pull of survival. Her secretarial job provided structure, but barely enough income. Her daughter, now a toddler, needed clothes, food, attention. Tina relied heavily on family. Her mother watched the child during work hours, and Sandra helped with groceries when paychecks ran thin. But Tina maintained her spirit. She still drew in her notebooks during lunch breaks. She still listened to Prince and Bruce Springsteen on her Walkman during bus rides. She still talked about saving enough money to take her daughter to Disney World someday, a dream that felt impossibly distant but worth pursuing. Money troubles occasionally forced difficult choices. When friends with cars offered rides to run errands or visit family in southern Indiana, Tina accepted. When acquaintances mentioned heading toward Kentucky or Tennessee, she'd sometimes catch a lift rather than pay for gas. It was the economics of working-class America, trust and necessity intertwined. That fall, Tina discovered she was pregnant again 10 to 12 weeks along by late November. She hadn't told many people yet, still processing the news herself. Another child meant more expenses, more childcare needs, more everything. But Tina McKinney Farmer didn't run from challenges. Thanksgiving Day 1984 arrived cold and clear. Tina spent the holiday with family at her mother's house on the east side. The kitchen smelled of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie. Her daughter toddled between relatives, collecting hugs. Tina wore jeans and a tan pullover, her red hair pulled back in a ponytail. She laughed at her father's corny jokes and helped wash dishes alongside Sandra. Around early evening, she mentioned catching a ride south with someone she'd met, a trucker, maybe, or an acquaintance heading toward Kentucky. The details were vague, the kind of casual mention that wouldn't have seemed alarming at the time. She kissed her daughter goodbye, hugged her mother, and promised to call soon. "Be safe, Tina Marie," her mother said, the way she always did. "Always am, Mom," Tina replied, flashing that bright smile. She walked out into the November dusk, her tan pullover bright against the darkening sky. Within hours, she was spotted accompanied by a trucker on Interstate 65 southbound. It was the last confirmed sighting of Tina Marie Farmer alive. Her daughter would never see her mother again. The 1st of January 1985. New Year's Day dawned cold across Campbell County, Tennessee, frost clinging to the interstate guardrails along I-75. Two men drove southbound near Jellicoe, nursing headaches from the previous night's celebrations. Around mid-morning, they pulled over at a wide shoulder to stretch and relieve themselves. One man walked toward the embankment, scanning the tree line. Something tan caught his eye, about 30 feet down the slope fabric, maybe a discarded blanket. Curious, he descended carefully, boots sliding on loose rocks and dead leaves. The smell hit him first. Sharp, unmistakable decay. He stopped 10 feet away, hand covering his mouth. The tan fabric wasn't just a blanket, it wrapped around a human form. Red hair matted against decomposed skin. Jeans, a pullover shirt, hands positioned unnaturally, wrists showing marks. The face was unrecognizable, ravaged by time and wildlife. He scrambled up the embankment, shouting to his companion, "Call the police. Now." Campbell County Sheriff's deputies arrived within 40 minutes, followed by Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agents. They cordoned off the area with yellow tape, photographing the scene from multiple angles. The body lay approximately 30 feet from the highway, partially concealed by brush, deliberately hidden but not buried. Whoever dumped her wanted her found eventually, but not immediately. Detective Roy Duncan, a 15-year veteran of the Campbell County Sheriff's Office, led the initial response. He knelt beside the remains, noting details in his leather-bound notepad. Female, petite build, red hair shoulder length, advanced decomposition suggesting death occurred between late October and December. She wore a tan pullover, a shirt beneath, and jeans. A blanket wrapped around her torso showed visible staining. "Bag everything separately," Duncan instructed the evidence technician. "Blanket, clothing, anything within a 10-foot radius." The Campbell County medical examiner arrived by early afternoon. Dr. Harold Benson, a soft-spoken pathologist who'd handled countless rural deaths, performed a preliminary examination on site before authorizing transport to the morgue in nearby La Follette. The autopsy, conducted January 2nd, revealed brutal facts. Cause of death, ligature strangulation. Marks around the victim's neck indicated she'd been strangled with a cord or rope. Pressure applied until asphyxiation occurred. Defensive wounds on her hands and forearms showed she'd fought her attacker. Time of death, approximately 4 to 8 weeks prior, placing it between early November and mid-December 1984. Most critically, The medical examiner documented evidence of sexual assault. Semen stains covered the blanket and clothing. Vaginal swabs confirmed assault occurred peri-mortem, around the time of death. The victim had been 10 to 12 weeks pregnant when killed. TBI Special Agent Marcus Webb took charge of the investigation. A methodical investigator with salt and pepper hair and a reputation for solving difficult cases, Webb coordinated between Campbell County, the medical examiner, and the TBI crime lab in Nashville. He ordered the blanket and clothing preserved in evidence lockers, understanding that biological evidence might prove crucial. Though in 1985, DNA profiling remained years away from practical use. We've got semen. We've got ligature marks. We've got a dump site along a major trucking route, Webb told deputies during the initial briefing. This wasn't random. Somebody knew this highway. The TBI crime lab processed evidence through January 1985, using techniques available at the time. Blood typing from the semen indicated type O positive, the most common type, shared by 38% of the population, useful for exclusion, but not identification. Fingerprints were lifted from the victim's hands. Despite decomposition, the ridge patterns remained partially intact, documented, and filed with the TBI. Without a match in any database, they served only as potential future identification. Fiber analysis of the blanket revealed nothing distinctive, a common cotton polyester blend available at any discount store. The ligature marks suggested a rope or cord approximately half-inch diameter, but no weapon was recovered. The victim's dental work was photographed and charted. She had several fillings, typical of working-class dental care repairs done but no cosmetic work. Dental records were circulated to Tennessee and surrounding states, but no matches emerged. The pregnancy added a haunting dimension. The fetus, approximately 10 to 12 weeks developed, had died with its mother. Dr. Benson noted this detail in his report. Understanding it might help identify the victim. A missing pregnant woman would generate more urgent searches, but no such reports surfaced in Tennessee. TBI Agent Webb theorized the victim wasn't local. She's from somewhere else, he told the Campbell County Sheriff. Transported here, or killed elsewhere, and dumped here. Interstate 75 runs from Michigan to Florida. She could be from anywhere. Jellicoe, Tennessee, a town of 2,400 souls, reacted with typical small-town horror and fascination. The local newspaper, the Lafayette Press, ran the story on page 3. Unidentified woman found slain, near I-75. Residents speculated at the diner and the gas station. Was she a runaway? A prostitute? A hitchhiker? The word trucker entered conversations early. Interstate 75 was a major commercial route, 18-wheelers thundering through day and night. Truck stop managers reported increased police presence, officers questioning drivers about suspicious behavior in November and December. But without an identity, the case lacked urgency. Jane Doe became another highway tragedy, filed away in the growing collection of unsolved murders along America's interstates. TBI Special Agent Marcus Webb approached the investigation systematically. Despite having no victim identity, he started with the truck stops. Interstate 75 corridor, between Knoxville and Lexington, hosted dozens of trucking facilities, fuel stations, rest areas, motels advertising trucker rates. Webb and Campbell County detectives visited each location through January and February 1985, carrying autopsy photos cleaned up for civilian viewing, and asking the same questions. Did anyone see a young, red-headed woman in November or December? Did any drivers mention picking up a hitchhiker? Were there any altercations or suspicious incidents? The interviews yielded fragments, but no coherence. A waitress at the Jellicoe Truck Plaza remembered a girl with red hair having coffee with a driver in late November, but couldn't describe the man beyond older, maybe 40. A motel clerk recalled a woman matching the description, checking in alone on December 1st, but the register showed a name that led nowhere. 3 local men became persons of interest through tips. The first, a Campbell County resident with a history of domestic violence, was cleared through alibi he'd been incarcerated in Knox County Jail from November 15 through January 3 on unrelated charges. The second, a transient drifter spotted near the dump site in December, was tracked to Georgia and interviewed. He had type A blood, eliminating him as the semen donor. The third, a truck stop employee with a reputation for inappropriate comments toward women, submitted to questioning voluntarily and passed. Webb expanded the search regionally. He contacted police departments in Kentucky, Georgia, and Virginia, circulating Jane Doe's description and dental charts. He sent bulletins to the FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, hoping to match patterns with other highway murders. The response revealed something chilling. Tina wasn't alone. Between 1,978 and 1,985, at least 6 young women with red or reddish-brown hair had been found murdered along highways in Tennessee, Arkansas, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi. They'd been strangled, their bodies discarded near interstates, often sexually assaulted. Most remained unidentified. In February 1985, Webb attended a multi-state task force meeting in Nashville, focused on these redhead murders. Investigators from 5 states compared notes, searching for patterns. The victims ranged from teenagers to women in their 20s. They'd been found near I-40, I-75, I-81, major trucking corridors through the Bible Belt. Some showed signs of ligature strangulation. Several had semen evidence preserved. The task force theorized a serial killer, possibly a long-haul trucker, targeting vulnerable red-headed women hitchhikers, runaways, sex workers, but without DNA technology or a centralized database. Connecting the cases proved impossible. Each jurisdiction guarded its evidence, hoping to solve its own case first. Webb left the meeting frustrated but informed. His Jane Doe fit the pattern perfectly. Redhead, strangled, dumped near I-75, semen evidence. But fitting a pattern didn't identify a killer. Despite the investigation's failures, Webb made one critical decision that would matter decades later. Preserve everything biological, he instructed the TBI crime lab. I don't care if we can't use it now. Technology changes. The blanket, still stained with semen, was packaged in acid-free paper and placed in climate-controlled evidence storage at the TBI lab in Nashville. The victim's clothing, tan pullover, shirt, jeans was similarly preserved. Vaginal swabs, though degraded, were sealed and stored. The evidence received a case number, 850001, JC, Jane Doe, Campbell County, 1,985. Most importantly, Webb ensured the evidence chain of custody remained intact. Each transfer was documented, each storage location recorded. Even as he rotated to other assignments in 1986, he made sure the Jane Doe file remained accessible, not buried in some forgotten basement. Someday, he told a colleague, science will catch up to this bastard. That day was 31 years away. Summer 1985. The investigation died. Webb had exhausted local leads. The multi-state Redhead Murders Task Force dissolved due to lack of funding and jurisdictional squabbles. Jane Doe's dental records sat in filing cabinets across 6 states, generating no matches. The Campbell County Sheriff's Department shifted resources to active cases. The file was marked cold unsolved homicide and stored in a locked cabinet at the county courthouse. TBI agent Webb moved on to new investigations, though he kept a copy of Jane Doe's case summary in his personal files, reviewing it occasionally over the years. The Jellicoe community forgot. The truck stop waitresses stopped mentioning the murdered girl. The newspaper stopped running anniversary stories after the first year. Interstate 75 continued its relentless flow of commerce, oblivious to the violence that had occurred on its shoulder. Only one group refused to forget, but they didn't know yet that their missing daughter was Tennessee's Jane Doe. In Indianapolis, 300 miles north, Tina Farmer's family lived in agonizing limbo. When Tina didn't call after Thanksgiving 1984, her mother initially rationalized. Maybe she'd extended her trip. Maybe she'd met someone. But when a week passed without contact, maternal instinct turned to dread. On December 3rd, Tina's mother filed a missing persons report with the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. Detective Lawrence Hoffman took the information. Tina Marie Farmer, age 21, white female, red curly hair, green eyes, 5'1", 110 pounds, last seen November 22nd. She'd mentioned catching a ride south with a trucker. Hoffman was sympathetic but realistic. Young adults leave sometimes, he explained gently, especially after holidays with family. She might call next week, but Tina never called. Her mother, then in her early 40s, refused to accept disappearance as abandonment. She knew her daughter. Tina would never leave her child without explanation. Something terrible had happened. She made posters on the photocopier at the library. Tina's high school graduation photo reproduced in grainy black and white. Missing, Tina Marie Farmer. Last seen the 22nd of November 2084. She stapled them to telephone poles across Indianapolis's east side, handed them to truckers at local stops, mailed them to police departments in Kentucky and Tennessee. Sandra Price, Tina's sister, joined the search. The two women drove south on weekends, following I-65 toward Louisville, stopping at every rest area and truck stop. They showed Tina's photo to waitresses and clerks, asking if anyone remembered a red-headed girl in late November. Most shook their heads. A few offered vague maybes that led nowhere. Back home, Tina's daughter asked for Mommy. She was too young to understand absence, too young to grasp the weight of silence. Tina's mother took over primary childcare, raising her granddaughter while maintaining hope that Tina would walk through the door someday. But deep down, in the place where mothers know things, she understood. Tina was gone. Not missing gone. Dead, probably. But without a body, without confirmation, she couldn't grieve. She existed in suspended animation, neither mourning nor celebrating, just waiting. Christmas 1984 passed in hollow ritual. Tina's stocking hung on the mantel alongside her daughter's. Her mother set a place at the dinner table, a gesture that would become annual tradition. "She'll come home," her mother whispered, though the words tasted like ash. The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, overwhelmed with active cases and hampered by 1,980 seconds technology, couldn't prioritize an adult missing person who'd left voluntarily with a trucker. Detective Hoffman followed up periodically, checking hospitals, calling jails, but generated no leads. Indiana lacked laws requiring unidentified deceased persons be entered into national databases, so when Tennessee's Jane Doe information circulated, it never reached Indianapolis. The McKinney family and Tennessee investigators worked parallel tracks, each unaware the other held half the puzzle. Tina's mother began a vigil that would last 34 years. Every March 7th, Tina's birthday, her mother woke before dawn and drove to Crown Hill Cemetery. The symbolic grave's marker read, Tina Marie Farmer, the 7th of March, 1963, the 22nd of November, 1984, forever loved. The dash between dates was a lie. She didn't know when Tina died, only when she vanished. She brought flowers, daffodils in spring, silk arrangements in winter. She'd kneel on the grass and talk to the empty ground. "You'd be 25 today, baby girl. Your daughter's doing well, smart as a whip, looks just like you. Red hair, green eyes. She asks about you still. I tell her you loved her more than anything." She'd sit for an hour, watching sunrise paint the cemetery gold, then drive home to raise her granddaughter. Every November 22nd, the last sighting, she lit a candle in the window. Tina's childhood bedroom remained untouched, a shrine to frozen time, drawings still tacked to walls, The transistor radio on the nightstand. Clothes in the closet. Sized for a 1-year-old who'd never age. Her husband urged her to move on. "It's been 5 years," he said in 1989. 10 years in 1994. But mothers don't move on from missing daughters. They orbit the absence, forever pulled by gravitational grief. The Indianapolis Star ran anniversary stories intermittently, especially in milestone years. November 1989. 5 years later, family still seeks missing mother. The article featured Tina's mother holding her granddaughter, now 5 years old. "Someone knows something," she told the reporter. "Tina didn't just vanish. She's out there somewhere." November 1994. Decade-old mystery. What happened to Tina Farmer? The piece mentioned the Redhead murders, suggesting Tina might be connected, but offered no new leads. Detective Hoffman, now a sergeant, was quoted, "We've never closed this case. If anyone has information, please come forward." November 1999. 15 years of questions. By then, Tina's mother was in her late 50s. The article showed her at the symbolic grave, flowers in hand. Her granddaughter, now 16, stood beside her, a living ghost of Tina at the same age. The coverage generated tips, mostly dead ends. Someone claimed to have seen Tina in Florida in 1990. Another insisted she joined a cult in Arizona. Each tip was investigated and dismissed. The family learned to dread November, the month that stole Tina, and offered nothing in return. Before we continue with how technology finally caught up to this case, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. Are you in the Midwest? Have you heard of the Redhead murders? Let me know in the comments, and hit that like button if you're invested in Tina's story. In 1986, DNA profiling emerged from British laboratories, revolutionizing criminal justice. By the early 1992s, the FBI established CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, allowing law enforcement to compare DNA profiles nationally. In 1998, Tennessee joined CODIS, uploading DNA evidence from unsolved crimes. But the Campbell County Jane Doe evidence sat untouched. Budget constraints meant only active cases received DNA testing. Cold cases languished in storage, their evidence aging in climate-controlled lockers. In 2000, Tennessee launched the TBI Cold Case Unit, funded by federal grants. The unit's mission: review unsolved homicides using modern technology. But with hundreds of cold cases statewide, progress was slow. Jane Doe's file was reviewed in 2003. An analyst noted the preserved semen evidence, but testing was deferred due to higher priority cases. Meanwhile, genealogical databases began changing investigative possibilities. Websites like Ancestry.com and 23andMe, launched in the 2000s, allowed people to upload DNA and find relatives. By 2010, these databases contained millions of profiles. Investigators began using genetic genealogy, comparing crime scene DNA to public databases to identify suspects through family trees. The puzzle pieces existed. They just hadn't been assembled yet. The Campbell County Jane Doe case changed hands multiple times over 3 decades. TBI Special Agent Marcus Webb retired in 1995, passing the file to Agent Donna Mitchell. Mitchell, a meticulous investigator specializing in cold cases, reviewed the evidence in 1997 and submitted a formal request for DNA testing. Approved in 1998, the TBI Crime Lab extracted a partial DNA profile from the blanket semen stains, enough for comparison but not identification. The profile was uploaded to CODIS in 1999. No matches. Mitchell retired in 2005. The file moved to Agent Carl Rogers, who worked it sporadically between active cases. In 2008, he resubmitted the DNA profile after CODIS expanded. Still no matches. In 2012, the file landed on the desk of TBI Special Agent Brandon Elkins, a 8-year-old investigator with a reputation for solving impossible cases. Elkins grew up in East Tennessee, understood the region's culture, and approached cold cases with fresh determination. He read Jane Doe's file cover to cover in February 2013. The preserved evidence impressed him. Webb's 1,985 foresight had been extraordinary. The Redhead murders connection intrigued him, but the lack of victim identity frustrated him. "We've got killer DNA but no victim name," Elkins told his supervisor. "We need to flip that priority. Identify her first, then the DNA might match someone in her orbit." He requested the victim's fingerprints be resubmitted to modernized databases. In 1985, fingerprint comparison was manual and limited. By 2013, automated fingerprint identification systems could search millions of prints in minutes. The request was filed in March 2013, then buried under budget cuts and personnel changes. Elkins moved to another investigation. Jane Doe's file returned to the cold case cabinet. 34 years. Dozens of false leads. In 1987, a psychic from Memphis contacted the Campbell County Sheriff's Department, claiming she'd channeled Jane Doe's spirit. The victim was named Christine, she said, killed by a man with a scar on his left hand. Detectives dutifully investigated every Christine reported missing in Tennessee. None matched. In 1992, a prisoner in Arkansas claimed he'd witnessed the murder while hitchhiking on I-75. He described the dump site with uncanny accuracy because he'd read newspaper articles. Under polygraph, he admitted lying to negotiate a sentence reduction. In 1996, an amateur detective convinced Jane Doe was a Canadian runaway, published a theory online, complete with a name and backstory. The Canadian woman was eventually found alive in Vancouver, annoyed by the attention. In 2002, a trucker confessed to the murder while hospitalized with terminal cancer. Detectives rushed to his bedside, recording a rambling confession that included details about burying her with her jewelry. But Jane Doe wore no jewelry. The trucker died days later, his confession a final attention grab. In 2008, a forensic artist created an updated facial reconstruction using clay modeling and the skull's structure. The image, a young woman with sharp cheekbones and a slight smile, was released to media. Tips flooded in from across the country. "That's my missing cousin. I went to school with her." Every lead was investigated. None panned out. The most painful false lead came in 2010. A woman in Michigan contacted the TBI, claiming she was Tina Farmer alive, having faked her death to escape an abusive relationship. Tina's mother, now 70, received the call from TBI agent Rogers. For 48 hours, she allowed herself to hope. Then DNA testing proved the Michigan woman was lying, seeking attention, or perhaps genuinely delusional. The hopes collapse nearly broke Tina's mother. She stopped answering the phone for months. Despite false leads and dead ends, Tina's family maintained their vigil with remarkable consistency. Sandra Price, Tina's sister, became the family's investigative force. In 1992, 8 years after Tina vanished, Sandra contacted the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, demanding Tina's information be entered into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, launched in 2007. The database was designed to cross-reference missing persons with unidentified remains, but Indiana's participation was inconsistent, and Tina's case wasn't prioritized. Sandra persisted. She called every 6 months, spoke to new detectives, filed paperwork. In 2009, she finally got Tina entered into NamUs, complete with dental records, fingerprints from Tina's 1,983 arrest, and physical description. The entry sat unmatched. Tennessee's Jane Doe, entered separately, listed different file numbers and agency contacts. The system designed to connect them failed due to bureaucratic silos. Meanwhile, Tina's daughter grew up carrying her mother's absence. She graduated high school in 2001, college in 2005. She married in 2010, giving birth to twins in 2012, Tina's grandchildren, who would never meet her. At her wedding, an empty chair bore Tina's photo. At the hospital, she wept, wishing her mother could meet the babies. Tina's mother, now in her 70s, slowed physically but never mentally. She joined Facebook in 2011, learning to navigate social media to spread Tina's story. She shared missing person posts, commented on cold case forums, messaged true crime bloggers. Her profile photo, Tina's graduation picture, forever young. In 2015, she was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. The diagnosis terrified her, not for her own decline, but for the possibility she'd forget Tina. She wrote everything down in spiral notebooks: dates, detective names, timeline details. She made Sandra promise to continue searching even after she could no longer remember why. "I won't stop," Sandra assured her. "Not until we bring her home." On the 22nd of November, 2017, the 33rd anniversary of Tina's disappearance, the family held a vigil at Crown Hill Cemetery. Tina's daughter attended with her twins, now 5 years old. Tina's mother, 77 and increasingly frail, lit a candle at the symbolic grave. "We're still here, Tina," she whispered, "still waiting." She didn't know that hundreds of miles south, evidence bearing her daughter's name was finally about to speak. 2016. Brandon Elkins opened the Jane Doe file again. Forensic technology had advanced significantly since 2013. DNA extraction methods could now recover profiles from degraded biological evidence previously considered useless. Genealogical databases had exploded. GE Deadmatch, a free DNA comparison site, contained over 1 million profiles by 2016, mostly uploaded by amateur genealogists researching family trees. Most significantly, law enforcement had begun using investigative genetic genealogy, comparing crime scene DNA to public databases, building family trees to identify suspects. The method had solved several high-profile cases, including cold murders from the 1972nd. Elkins attended a training seminar on genetic genealogy in Nashville in March 2016. He immediately thought of Jane Doe. "We've got excellent DNA," he told his supervisor. "We've got preserved evidence from 1985. If we can extract a usable profile, we can potentially identify the victim through genealogy, then use the killer's DNA to catch him." In June 2016, Elkins received a federal grant specifically designated for cold case DNA analysis. He resubmitted the Campbell County evidence, the blanket, clothing, and swabs to the TBI crime lab with instructions: extract the most complete DNA profile possible from the semen, and separately attempt to extract any victim DNA from the clothing. The lab worked for months. Semen evidence had degraded over 31 years, but new extraction techniques recovered a near-complete YSTR profile male DNA from the blanket. The lab uploaded it to CODIS in November 2016. The 14th of December 2016, Elkins's phone rang. CODIS hit. The CODIS match identified Jerry Leon Johns, a name Elkins didn't recognize initially. He pulled Johns's criminal history. Born the 16th of November 1948 in Cleveland, Tennessee. Truck driver, long-haul routes across the Midwest and South. Arrested March 1985 inches, Knox County, Tennessee, just 2 months after Jane Doe was found. Elkins read the arrest report, his pulse quickening. On the 3rd of March 1985, Johns picked up Linda Shackey, a 4-year-old red-headed woman, at a Knoxville bar. He drove her to a secluded area near Interstate 40, bound her with a piece of torn t-shirt, strangled her until she lost consciousness, sexually assaulted her, and dumped her body along the highway. He believed she was dead, but Shaka survived. She regained consciousness, crawled to the road, and flagged down a passing motorist. Her testimony led to Johns's conviction in 1987 on charges of aggravated kidnapping, aggravated assault, and public intoxication. He was sentenced to 20 years. Elkins checked Johns's current status. The trucker had been in and out of prison for decades. Parole violations, minor crimes. Most recently, He died on the 18th of December, 2015, while incarcerated at the Northeast Correctional Complex in Mountain City, Tennessee. He was 67. Son of a bitch, Elkins muttered. He's been dead a year, but the DNA match was solid. Johns' DNA, collected during his 1985 arrest and entered into CODIS, matched the semen from Jane Doe's blanket. The timelines aligned. Johns was actively trucking I-75 inches late, 1,984. He had a documented pattern of targeting young red-headed women near interstates. He strangled, sexually assaulted, and dumped victims exactly as Jane Doe had been killed. Jerry Leon Johns was the killer, no doubt, but Jane Doe still had no name. In August 2018, TBI intelligence analyst Amy Emberton was reviewing cold case files, specifically those potentially connected to the Redhead murders. A true crime blog she followed had recently published an article on unsolved missing persons cases in the Midwest, including Tina Marie Farmer from Indianapolis. Emberton read the blog post during lunch at her desk. Tina Farmer, 21 years old, red curly hair, 5'1", 110 pounds. Last seen the 22nd of November 1984, with a trucker headed south from Indianapolis, pregnant at the time of disappearance. Emberton froze. She pulled up the Campbell County Jane Doe file. Jane Doe, red hair, petite build, found the 1st of January 1985. Strangled, sexually assaulted, 10 to 12 weeks pregnant. Timeline matched. Physical description matched. Geographic route matched. I-65 from Indianapolis connects to I-75 through Kentucky, but the crucial detail was fingerprints. Emberton noted that Tina Farmer had been arrested in Marion County, Indiana, in 1983 for a minor infraction, likely disorderly conduct or petty theft. Details unclear. That arrest would have generated fingerprints in the Indiana system. She contacted the Marion County Sheriff's Department. Did they have fingerprints on file for Tina Marie Farmer? They did. Arrested July 1983. Prints on file. Emberton requested they be sent to the TBI for comparison with Jane Doe's post-mortem prints, preserved since 1985. The comparison took 2 weeks. On the 6th of September 2018, the TBI fingerprint examiner called Emberton. 10-point match. Jane Doe is Tina Marie Farmer. Emberton walked to Elkins' office, her hands shaking. We've got an ID. TBI Special Agent Brandon Elkins placed the call on the 7th of September 2018 to the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. He asked to be connected to whoever was handling the Tina Farmer missing persons case. Detective Sarah Chen, who'd inherited the file in 2015, took the call. This is Chen, Detective. This is Special Agent Elkins, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. I'm calling about Tina Marie Farmer, missing since 1984. We've identified her remains. Chen's breath caught. She'd reviewed the file dozens of times, never expecting resolution. You're certain? Fingerprints match. 10 points. It's her. She was found in Tennessee in January 1985. Murdered. We need you to notify the family. Detective Chen drove to Sandra Price's home that afternoon. Sandra, now 56, answered the door with her usual wariness. Decades of false leads had taught her caution. Miss Price, I'm Detective Chen, IMPD. It's about your sister Tina. We've identified her remains. She was found in Tennessee in 1985, shortly after she went missing. I'm so sorry. Sandra's knees buckled. She gripped the doorframe, tears streaming. You're sure? It's really her? Fingerprints confirmed it. I'm so sorry for your loss. Sandra called her mother immediately. At 78, Tina's mother lived in assisted living, her Alzheimer's progressing but still functioning. Sandra drove over, sat beside her, and delivered the news. Mom, they found Tina. In Tennessee. She's been gone since 1985. Her mother stared, processing. For a moment, Sandra worried she wouldn't understand. Then tears filled the older woman's eyes. "She's not coming home, is she?" "No, Mom. She's not." They held each other. Two women who'd spent 34 years in limbo, finally able to grieve. But the relief was complicated. Yes, they had answers, but those answers meant Tina had been dead all along, just miles away in Tennessee, buried under a wrong name, while her family searched highways and placed settings at empty tables. "At least we know," Sandra whispered. "At least we can bury her properly now." With Tina identified, Agent Elkins moved to the final piece, formally linking Jerry Johns to the murder. The DNA match was solid, but Johns was dead. Tennessee law required presenting evidence to a grand jury, even in cases involving deceased suspects, ensuring thorough review before making public accusations. Elkins spent fall 2018 building the case. He compiled DNA evidence. Johns' CODIS profile matched semen from Tina's blanket. Johns was actively trucking I-75 corridor in November-December 1984. Shaka case from March 1985 showed identical method, red-headed victim, interstate location, strangulation, sexual assault, dump. Fuel records showed Johns made stops in Kentucky along Tina's likely route south. Inmates who'd served time with Johns reported him boasting about girls he'd given rides to, and one who didn't make it. In November 2019, Elkins presented the case to the Campbell County Grand Jury. The proceedings took 3 days, with testimony from TBI forensic analysts explaining the DNA match. Linda Shaka, now 58, describing her 1985 attack by Johns. Sandra Price, speaking about her sister's disappearance, and Dr. Harold Benson, the original medical examiner, now retired, but still sharp at 82. On the 18th of December 2019, exactly 4 years after Johns died, the grand jury returned its determination. If alive, Jerry Leon Johns would be indicted for first-degree murder in the death of Tina Marie Farmer. On the 19th of December 2019, the TBI held a press conference in Nashville. TBI Director David Rausch stood at the podium, flanked by Agent Elkins, Campbell County Sheriff Mark Brown, and Sandra Price. Reporters packed the room, cameras clicking. In January 1985, an unidentified woman was found murdered along Interstate 75 Campbell County. Rausch began. For 34 years, she remained Jane Doe. Today, we can finally tell you her name, Tina Marie Farmer, age 21, of Indianapolis, Indiana. He detailed the investigation, the preserved evidence, the DNA breakthrough, the fingerprint match. Then he addressed the killer. Through DNA analysis, we've identified Tina's murderer as Jerry Leon Johns, a truck driver from Cleveland, Tennessee. Johns died in prison in 2015. But yesterday, a Campbell County grand jury determined he would have been indicted for first-degree murder had he lived. Rausch gestured to Sandra Price. "We hope this will bring long-sought answers to Tina's family, who never stopped searching." Sandra approached the microphone, her voice steady despite emotion. Tina was a loving mother, daughter, and sister. For 34 years we wondered what happened to her. Today we have truth. We're grateful to the TBI, to Agent Elkins, to everyone who never forgot our Jane Doe was someone's daughter. Tina can finally rest in peace. The story went national. CNN, NBC, Fox News covered it. True crime podcasts dedicated episodes to the case. The combination of elements, decades-long cold case, DNA breakthrough, mother's vigil, serial killer connection, captivated audiences. In follow-up interviews, TBI officials detailed the forensic work that solved the case. Agent Elkins explained the DNA process. In 1985, we had semen evidence, but no way to analyze it genetically. Blood typing was the best available technology, and it only narrowed suspects to 38% of the population. That evidence sat preserved for 31 years, waiting for science to catch up. When DNA profiling became standard in the 1,990 seconds, budget constraints meant only active cases received testing. But the 2016 federal grant changed that. We extracted a YSTR profile male DNA passed through paternal lines, Elkins continued. We uploaded it to CODIS and got a hit. Jerry Johns. John's DNA entered CODIS following his 1,985 conviction. Tennessee law requires DNA collection from violent offenders, Elkins noted. Without that law, we might never have matched him. The Linda Shack case proved crucial. Prosecutor Jared Effler, Campbell County District Attorney General, emphasized the pattern. Johns attacked Linda Shacka in March 1985, just 2 months after Tina's body was found. The method was identical: red-headed woman, interstate location, strangulation, sexual assault. Linda survived to testify. Tina didn't, but their cases are connected by DNA and method. Forensic psychologist Dr. Margaret Lawson, consulted by the TBI, profiled Johns. He targeted vulnerable women, likely hitchhikers or those needing rides. Redheads may have been a specific preference, or simply victims of opportunity. His choice of interstates allowed mobility and disposal. He's consistent with organized serial killer typology planning, victim selection, evidence disposal. Johns' death in 2015 prevented trial, but the grand jury indictment served legal and moral purposes. Families deserve official recognition of what happened, Effler explained. The indictment states publicly, Jerry Johns murdered Tina Farmer, even posthumously. That matters. The TBI confirmed they're reviewing other redhead murders for potential Johns connections. We're comparing his truck routes to other dump sites and timelines, Elkins said. If evidence exists, we'll test it. But Tina's case is the only one we can definitively link to him so far. For Tina's family, the resolution brought complex emotions, relief, grief, and the bittersweet ache of answers arriving too late. Tina's mother had lived to see her daughter identified in September 2018, but her Alzheimer's had progressed significantly. On good days, she understood. On bad days, she asked when Tina was coming home. She passed away in February 2020, just months after the grand jury indictment. She was 80. She held on long enough to know the truth, Sandra said at the funeral. That's what she needed. To know Tina didn't just leave us, to know someone was held accountable. Tina's daughter, now 36, attended every press conference and interview. She'd grown up with her grandmother's vigil, never knowing her mother but carrying her absence. I have 2 memories of my mom, she told reporters. My grandmother's stories, and this photo. She held up Tina's graduation picture, the same image that had been on missing person posters for 34 years. Now I have a 3rd memory. Justice. Jerry Johns is dead, but everyone knows what he did. He can't hide anymore. In March 2020, Tina's remains, held by Tennessee since 1985, were transported to Indianapolis. The family held a private burial at Crown Hill Cemetery, finally placing her in the symbolic grave her mother had tended for decades. Sandra spoke at the graveside service, addressing maybe 20 family members and friends. Tina, you've been gone 36 years, but you've never been forgotten. Mom kept you alive in our hearts. Now you can rest, knowing the truth is known. They placed her graduation photo on the updated headstone. Tina Marie McKinney Farmer, the 7th of March, 1963, November 1984. Beloved daughter, mother, sister, finally home. Tina's daughter visits monthly, bringing her own children, Tina's grandchildren. I tell them about their Nana, she said, about how she loved to draw, how she had red hair like theirs, how she fought to survive. And I tell them that even when someone takes everything from you, the truth finds its way out. The family established a small scholarship fund at Arsenal Technical High School in Tina's name, supporting young mothers pursuing education. Tina didn't get to finish her story, Sandra explained. But maybe we can help other young moms finish theirs. Tina Marie Farmer's case became a teaching tool for law enforcement agencies nationwide, demonstrating the critical importance of evidence preservation and interagency cooperation. At the 2021 International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference, Agent Elkins presented a workshop titled From Jane Doe to Justice, the 34-year investigation. Detectives from 47 states attended, taking notes on the methodologies that cracked the case. The lesson isn't just about DNA, Elkins told the audience. It's about Agent Marcus Webb's decision in 1985 to preserve biological evidence, even though the technology didn't exist yet. It's about intelligence analyst Amy Emberton reading a true crime blog on her lunch break and making a connection. It's about a family who refused to stop searching. Cold cases get solved through persistence, not magic. The case highlighted systematic failures that needed correction. NamUs, the national database designed to match missing persons with unidentified remains, had failed to connect Tina and Jane Doe, despite both being entered. The problem: different file numbers, different agency contacts, no automated cross-referencing of physical descriptions and timelines. Following Tina's identification, NamUs implemented algorithm improvements to flag potential matches based on multiple criteria: location, proximity, timeline overlap, physical characteristics, and circumstances. The Tina Farmer protocol now automatically alerts investigators when missing persons reports align with unidentified remains within 500 miles in 90 days. Tennessee expanded its cold case unit budget by 40% in 2020, directly citing the Farmer case as justification. The state legislature passed the Biological Evidence Preservation Act, requiring all Tennessee law enforcement agencies to preserve biological evidence from violent crimes for at least 50 years, with mandatory climate-controlled storage and documented chains of custody. Other states followed. By 2023, 38 states had adopted similar preservation requirements. Tina's identification and Johns's connection to Linda Shaka reignited investigation into the Redhead murders, the series of unsolved killings of red-headed women along highways between 1,978 and 1,992. The TBI created a dedicated task force in 2020, reviewing all 6 original cases plus 4 additional victims identified through pattern analysis. Agent Elkins led the team, coordinating with agencies in Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. The task force requested DNA testing on preserved evidence from all 10 cases. Results came back over 18 months. 2 cases yielded DNA profiles matching Jerry Johns. 3 cases produced DNA profiles matching different suspects, leading to ongoing investigations, and 5 cases had insufficient biological evidence for testing. The 2 additional Johns matches were Marcia King, found in Arkansas in 1981, and an unidentified victim found in Kentucky in 1983. Both showed the same pattern: red-headed women in their 20s, strangled, sexually assaulted, dumped near Interstate 40 and 75, respectively. Johns was likely responsible for at least 3 redhead murders, possibly more, Elkins announced in April 2022. But we're also confident the redhead murders weren't the work of a single killer. Multiple predators were operating on these highways during that era, some targeting redheads specifically, others opportunistically. Marcia King was identified through genetic genealogy in 2021 as Marcia Lenore King from Arkansas, missing since June 1981. Her family, like Tina's, had spent 40 years searching. The unidentified Kentucky victim remains nameless, but her DNA profile has been uploaded to genealogical databases. The search continues. Tina's case drew attention to a darker reality of America's interstate system: long-haul truckers who used their mobility and the anonymity of highways to hunt victims. The FBI's Highway Serial Killings Initiative, launched in 2009, maintains a database of victims found along or near highways, cross-referenced with truck stop locations and routes. As of 2023, the database contains over 850 potential victims and has helped solve 30 cases. Johns fit the profile perfectly. His trucking logs, subpoenaed after the DNA match, showed he'd driven routes through 35 states between 1975 and 2005. He frequented truck stops along I-75, I-40, I-65, and I-81 corridors where multiple unsolved murders occurred during his active years. Trucking industry reforms followed. In 2021, the American Trucking Associations implemented enhanced background check requirements, including mandatory DNA samples from drivers with violent crime convictions. The policy was controversial. Civil liberties groups argued it was invasive, but trucking companies adopted it voluntarily to protect their reputations. Rest areas and truck stops upgraded security. Many now feature 24-hour surveillance cameras, emergency call boxes, and increased lighting. Signs warning hitchhikers of dangers became standard along major routes. Advocacy groups used Tina's story to educate vulnerable populations. She wasn't hitchhiking recklessly, Sandra Price emphasized in interviews. She accepted a ride from someone she may have met casually, trying to save money to support her daughter. We need to acknowledge that economic desperation forces people into dangerous situations, and we need better support systems. The forensic techniques that identified Tina represented the cutting edge of cold case investigation. But technology continues evolving. Genetic genealogy, which played an indirect role through Johns's identification, has exploded since 2018. The technique gained fame through the Golden State Killer case, solved just months before Tina was identified. By 2023, genetic genealogy had helped solve over 400 cold cases nationwide. The process works by uploading crime scene DNA to public genealogy databases like GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA, identifying distant relatives, then building family trees to narrow suspects. It's labor-intensive, sometimes requiring analysis of third, fourth, or fifth cousins, but effective. Privacy concerns remain contentious. Some argue that people who upload DNA to learn about ancestry shouldn't have their genetic information used in criminal investigations. Others counter that solving murders justifies the intrusion, especially when victims like Tina spent decades without justice. Phenotyping using DNA to predict physical appearance has advanced dramatically. In Tina's case, traditional forensic reconstruction was used, but modern techniques can predict eye color, hair color, skin tone, freckling, and even facial structure from DNA samples. If Jane Doe's case had remained unsolved, 2023 technology might have generated a remarkably accurate image of Tina from biological evidence. Rapid DNA technology, which produces profiles in 90 minutes versus weeks in traditional labs, is expanding. As of 2023, over 200 U.S. law enforcement agencies have rapid DNA instruments, allowing faster comparison of suspects to evidence. The future may hold even more powerful tools. Researchers are developing techniques to extract DNA from fingerprints themselves, potentially identifying both the person who left the print and anyone they touched beforehand. Such technology could have identified Tina from her post-mortem fingerprints without waiting 34 years. Justice took 34 years to reach Tina Marie Farmer. By then, her killer was dead. Her mother had Alzheimer's. Her daughter had children of her own. But it arrived. Jerry Johns believed Interstate 75's anonymity would protect him forever. He was wrong. Evidence outlasted him. A mother's vigil outlasted him. Science caught up. Tina fought on that dark Tennessee roadside in 1984. The defensive wounds proved it. She fought for the life growing inside her and the daughter waiting in Indianapolis. She lost that fight, but 34 years later, she won the war. Her daughter visits Crown Hill Cemetery monthly with Tina's grandchildren. They bring flowers. They tell stories about a young woman who loved to draw and dreamed of Disney World. The twins, now teenagers, know their grandmother through legacy, not memory. Nana fought. Tina's daughter tells them, remember that. The symbolic grave is no longer symbolic. The dates no longer lie. Tina Marie Farmer rests in Indiana soil, finally home. On the headstone, beneath the epitaph, Sandra added one final line. Truth always comes home. It took 34 years. It required a mother's unbreakable vigil, an investigator's foresight, a survivor's testimony, a blogger's research, an analyst's lunch break, and forensic science's relentless march. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We cover cold cases where families refuse to surrender and science refuses to forget. Share Tina's story. Let other families know cold cases can be solved. Let investigators know preserving evidence matters. Let predators know highways don't offer the anonymity they once did. Remember her name, Tina Marie Farmer.